In The Power of Habit, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Charles Duhigg draws on extensive research to explore how habits develop into automatic behaviors that influence personal lives, businesses, and communities. He explains why unhealthy habits are notoriously difficult to break and provides a practical framework to help you understand and change any habit. We'll explore the power of habit in 4 parts. We'll first explain how your brain's tendency to rely on automatic routines encourages you to engage in habits unconsciously. In the second part, we'll explore the individual components of habits and cravings. Then, we'll discuss how advertisers play on your habits to sway your buying decisions and examine the impact of collective habits on businesses and communities. Finally, we'll provide actionable steps you can take to take control of your habits. Part 1. Habits are automatic patterns of behavior. Charles Duhigg argues that habits are unconscious decisions you make without actually thinking about them. While you may assume that you're continually making conscious decisions, Duhigg claims that more than 40% of your daily behaviors are driven by habits that you automatically engage in without conscious thought. Since your habits inform such a large part of how you think and what you do, they have an enormous impact on your health, productivity, relationships, and overall happiness. Short-form note. In Atomic Habits, James Clear argues that more than 50% of your daily behaviors are driven by unconscious habits. Because your habits play such a significant role in your life, Clear suggests that you go beyond simple reflection to develop awareness around your unconscious behaviors and their effect on you. He recommends that you track all of the actions you take daily. Then, determine which of your habits are beneficial or harmful to your overall well-being. You form habits to save mental energy. To explain why habits form and develop into automatic behaviors, Duhigg draws on neurological research that explores how your brain processes information and helps you function. According to this research, every time you attempt to learn or do something new, you have to apply conscious effort to do it right. This process takes up a lot of mental energy and restricts your ability to think about other things. Duhigg explains that your brain is designed to save mental energy on the things you do most often to avoid information overload and function efficiently. It does this by learning the sequence of actions it takes to achieve something. It then converts this sequence into an automatic routine and stores it so that you can perform your daily tasks automatically, without conscious thought. This explains why, the more often you practice doing certain things, the easier it becomes for you to do them without thinking. Automatic routines require strong neural pathways. What Duhigg says here about the brain's learning and automation processes isn't new. Neuroscientists and psychologists agree that the brain relies on automation to avoid information overload. However, Duhigg doesn't explain exactly how your brain converts a sequence of actions into an automatic routine. We'll explore the molecular activity that occurs inside your brain to clarify how your brain transitions from learning to compartmentalizing as an automatic routine. Every time your brain creates a new automatic routine, it changes its physical structure by strengthening specific neural pathways. Here's a very brief overview of neural pathways. The brain consists of a dense network of pathways consisting of neurons, or information messengers. Synapses transmit sensory information through this network of neurons. This sensory information is then stored in your short-term memory while your brain compares it to the memories you've stored in your long-term memory. This allows your brain to judge how relevant the new information is to your habitual behaviors, the processes stored in your long-term memory, and determines whether it should be kept or discarded. Neuroscientists believe that your memory and recall rely upon the relationship that your neurons have with each other. Each time you learn something new or attempt to change your habitual routine, your brain applies conscious effort and attention to form new neural connections and pathways. The more you perform a certain sequence of actions, the stronger the relationship between the corresponding neurons in your brain, and the more likely your brain is to store it as an automatic routine. Why bad habits are difficult to break. Your brain creates automatic patterns based on the routines you engage in most often. While this process does offer many benefits such as not having to relearn everything you need to do on a daily basis, there is a significant drawback. Your brain permanently stores these patterns even if your habits are bad for you. According to Duhigg, This permanent storage explains why bad habits are notoriously difficult to break. Without deliberate intervention, you continue to automatically engage in these habits. Short-form note: neuroscientists confirm that once your brain permanently stores your automatic patterns, it's not possible to delete them. However, neuroplasticity research confirms that it's possible to weaken these patterns so that your brain no longer relies on them for instructions about what to do in a given situation. This weakening process involves practicing new behavioral patterns to encourage the formation of new neural pathways in your brain. Part 2. The Anatomy of Habits. Duhigg argues that the main reason people fail to change their habits is that they don't understand the nature of their habits and how to most effectively change them. They assume that they can simply apply their willpower to end the habit. However, according to Duhigg, applying willpower alone is ineffective as this method doesn't address the elements that fuel and reinforce your habit. Short-form note: The Willpower Instinct by Kelly McGonigal offers insight into why relying solely on willpower to change habits is ineffective. She explains how applying willpower to change existing habits is often difficult because external factors such as stress, lack of sleep, or distractions compromise your ability to exercise self-control. Since most people face such issues daily, their willpower isn't strong enough to resist their brain's reliance on the automatic patterns that fuel their habits. Habits require 3 elements to become automatic. Duhigg argues that your brain relies on assigning a specific starting point and end point to each of your habits so that it knows what automatic routine it should default to in different situations. Duhigg claims that all habits require 3 essential elements to help your brain determine these starting and end points. A cue. This is a trigger that signals the starting point of your habit and tells your brain to move into automatic mode to execute a specific routine. For example, you see a cookie and feel the urge to eat it. A routine. You act out the physical, mental, or emotional sequence of behavior, automatic routine, that your brain has stored. For example, you open the jar of cookies and eat all of the cookies. A reward. This is the result of your routine and signals the end of your habit. For example, you feel a sugar rush from eating all of the cookies. Duhigg claims that these 3 elements only form part of the story. On their own, the cue and the reward don't make a habit. Consider an activity you perform infrequently, such as replacing a flat tire on your car. You have a cue, the tire bursts, a routine, you fix it, and a reward, self-satisfaction. But you don't have a habit of fixing your tire. According to Duhigg, this sort of activity doesn't turn into a habit because you don't do it often enough and the reward isn't inextricably linked to the activity. Your brain doesn't feel the need to convert it into an automatic routine. Habits rely on obvious cues, easy routines, and satisfying rewards. In Atomic Habits, James Clear expands on the role that cues, routines, and rewards play in habit formation by categorizing these individual elements into 2 distinct phases: problem and solution. Problem phase: the cue, seeing a cookie, that triggers your urge to eat the cookie. Solution phase: your routine, eating the cookie, resolves the problem and provides a reward, sugar rush. In addition, Clear explains that habits rely on obvious cues, easy routines, and satisfying rewards. This adds clarity to why you don't have a habit of infrequent or difficult tasks, like fixing your tire. Flat tires are a rare occurrence, so your brain doesn't have an obvious, automatic response to the cue. The routine to fix them is laborious, and the satisfaction you receive isn't worth the effort you have to go through. Consequently, Clear suggests that you consider how to make your unwanted habits as inconvenient as possible. Cravings reinforce habits. Duhigg argues that habits require an additional essential component to encourage your brain to create automatic routines and reinforce your habits: cravings. A craving is the anticipation of the reward when you perceive the cue. Duhigg explains that every time you engage in a habit and receive a reward, dopamine, happy hormone, levels in your brain spike. Interestingly, the more you engage in this habit, the more your brain associates the habit's cue with the habit's reward. This causes your dopamine levels to spike as soon as you perceive the cue. In other words, you sense the cue and anticipate the reward before you engage in the routine. Because your brain expects to receive the reward, It encourages you to engage in the automatic routine to fulfill this expectation. If, however, you fail to receive the reward, your dopamine levels drop and you feel disappointed. According to Duhigg, cravings lie at the heart of every habit. Your brain craves the reward it anticipates and pushes you into an automatic routine to avoid disappointment. The more often you engage in this routine, the stronger your craving gets. This explains why you may suffer from a lack of self-control when you try to stop your bad habits. You feel compelled to satisfy your cravings even when faced with strong disincentives such as damaging your health or relationships. Anticipating a reward feels more pleasurable than experiencing a reward. What Duhigg explains about cravings and dopamine spikes has been verified and well documented in a number of psychology and self-help books. In Atomic Habits, James Clear adds that dopamine spikes occur both when you anticipate pleasure and when you experience pleasure. However, your emotional reaction when you're anticipating or craving something is 10 times stronger than it is when you're actually receiving or experiencing the thing. The pleasure you experience when you're craving something is so strong that it motivates you to follow through with your automatic routine. However, once you receive the reward, your feelings of pleasure remain neutral because you've already experienced the high of anticipation. Consequently, the reward you receive feels less satisfying than the anticipation you feel about receiving it. Clear's research adds weight to Duhigg's argument that cravings lie at the heart of every habit. In addition, his explanation concerning the difference between dopamine levels in the anticipating and receiving stages clarifies why people suffer from addictions. Their anticipation of the substance overrides the pleasure they receive from consuming the substance. They repeatedly overindulge in the reward in an attempt to match the high of anticipating it. Part 3. How habits influence individuals, businesses, and communities. In this section, we'll explore the multiple ways that habits influence you. We'll first reveal how advertisers play on your habits to sway your buying decisions. Then, we'll explain how collective habits determine how a business operates. Finally, we'll look at how successful social movements in any society rely on the convergence of social habits across various communities and social groups. How advertisers exploit your habits. According to Duhigg, advertisers deliberately play on your brain's reliance on automatic routines to influence your shopping decisions. They know that you're more likely to buy things that you're familiar with to avoid making conscious decisions every time you go shopping, because your brain wants to conserve energy. This is why they try so hard to figure out your preferences. For example, by tracking website cookies when you shop online or your reward cards when you shop offline. These methods allow them to send you customized deals that appeal to your predictable nature and get you back in their stores. Short-form note. Psychologists warn that your brain's tendency to operate in autopilot mode when shopping may save you time, but it doesn't save you money. Retailers manipulate their environments to accommodate your habitual purchases and trick you into making impulsive and unnecessary buying decisions. Research indicates that you're more likely to make impulsive purchases when you shop without a list, walk through more aisles, feel hungry, or when your store rearranges its layout, which they deliberately do periodically. Psychologists recommend that you write a shopping list and go straight for these items to avoid falling into the trap of making impulsive purchases. The influence of collective habits. According to Duhigg, businesses and communities rely on automatic routines just as much as you do to save time and energy. However, what's interesting here is that, by their nature, these entities rely on the collective habits of multiple people to determine how they operate. We'll explore this further throughout the rest of this section. How habits impact businesses. Duhigg argues that businesses rely on automatic routines so that managers and employees can get things done without having to question every action they take. However, many of these collective habits grow organically from an accumulation of individual decisions taken by different managers and employees. Over time, the company loses track of the individual decisions that initiated the habits that are now deeply ingrained in the company's culture. As a result, they end up acting out these automatic routines without knowing why. New employees quickly adopt these habits to fit in, and the cycle of automatic routines perpetuates. Duhigg argues that, when a company is unaware of the automatic routines that underpin its organization, it can easily fall into the trap of adopting deconstructive habits that undermine its operations. Businesses fail to align collective habits with their overall goals. Management experts explain that many organizations fail to take control of their collective habits because they assume that what worked historically to bring them success will continue to work in the future. However, this strategy falls short because business priorities, the goals that determine what types of customers the business serves and how it intends to provide value, evolve over time, and the collective habits they rely on must adapt, too. Experts argue that businesses must continually assess whether their collective habits support their overall priorities and take the necessary steps to align employee behaviors with the organization's goals. However, they warn that managers and employees tend to resist change for the same reasons that they develop habits in the first place: to save mental energy. Learning to do things differently increases the amount of effort that they need to apply to carry out their daily tasks and often creates resentment. Organizations can help smooth the transition to new collective habits by ensuring that managers and employees understand why they need to change their behaviors. How habits impact communities and societies. Duhigg argues that every major movement that has impacted communities and societies has been fueled by a particular type of habit: social habits. These habits define how you relate to and behave around other people. According to Duhigg, social habits influence the way you identify with and act on the information you're exposed to. Short-form note: research backs up Duhigg's claim that the choices you make about the movements you support are influenced by social habits. While you may think that your opinions about all of the issues you hear about are solely your own, social psychologists confirm that your perceptions and behaviors are heavily influenced by other people. You think a lot about other people, allow them to impact your emotions, and feel motivated to adapt your behaviors to please others. Consequently, the movements you choose to follow are an extension of this social influence. Duhigg explains that successful social movements rely on social habits in 3 ways. 1. The movement begins with the social habits of close friends. Someone is afflicted, and the people close to them immediately help. Short-form note: while taking action to help a friend in need feels like a natural and selfless response, James Clear, Atomic Habits, argues that your underlying motivation to belong affects all of your behaviors, including this one. He claims that there are 3 groups of people that greatly influence how you respond to situations: the close, family and friends; the many, the general public; and the powerful, the people you perceive as successful. 2. The movement grows from the habits of a community. The social ties that combine loosely affiliated people create social pressure to join the cause. Short-form note: in How Behavior Spreads, behavioral expert Damon Centola explains that you're more influenced by the percentage of people that are doing something, rather than the total number. If a high percentage of people in your community support a cause, you'll naturally feel like it's the right thing to do. 3. The movement endures because the participants engage in new social habits. The participants identify with the movement and take on habits that reflect their belief in the cause. Short-form note: while Duhigg focuses on the endurance of movements due to participants engaging in new social habits, he doesn't mention another vital factor. Eventually, collective individual habits influence business habits, making these new habits even more visible and accessible to potential participants. For example, when animal rights activists decided to become vegetarians, stores and restaurants changed their offerings to cater to this demand. This visible change brought vegetarianism to the attention of shoppers, some of whom then adopted the cause. Part 4. How to change your habits. Duhigg argues that, while you can't delete unwanted automatic patterns from your mind, through self-awareness and conscious control, you can override them with new automatic patterns that align with the habits you do want to practice. Short-form note: recall, neuroscientists confirm that it's possible to weaken these permanent patterns so that your brain no longer relies on them. Change an existing bad habit. According to Duhigg, once you understand the cues and cravings that drive your habits, you'll gain conscious control over the behavioral pattern you engage in. This allows you to disrupt your unwanted habit and override it with a new, more productive behavioral pattern. However, the cues and cravings that fuel your habits aren't always as obvious as they appear to be. This is because the longer you engage in a habit, the less aware you become of the specific cravings that motivate your habit. Mindfulness helps to uncover the root cause of your habits. Mindfulness experts agree that you're often unaware of the specific cues and cravings that drive your habits. However, they argue that your emotions are the cause of your habits because they make you susceptible to cues and cravings. They explain that you're often triggered by an emotional feeling that you seek to alleviate through the use of your habit. For example, if you smoke cigarettes, you're more likely to notice your cues, for example, the smell of tobacco, and give in to your cravings when you feel uncomfortable emotions such as fear or feelings of anxiety. However, while engaging in the habit does provide temporary relief, it doesn't fix the root of the problem, the uncomfortable feeling that you're trying to overcome. To give yourself a better chance of successfully changing your habits, examine the root cause, your emotions, of the habits you seek to change before you attempt to change them. Duhigg claims that all successful habit changes begin with experimentation to uncover the cues and rewards that drive your habits. He suggests following a 4-step process that relies on identifying your routine and experimenting with different rewards so that you can effectively isolate your cue and understand why you engage in your habits. Let's explore the process in detail. Step 1. Write down your habit-driven routine. The routine is the automatic behavior pattern that surrounds the habit you want to change. Duhigg suggests that you detail every step of the routine from beginning to end, even the steps you think aren't important. Short-form note: not all habits have a clear-cut routine, especially if they're emotional rather than behavioral. For example, if you habitually feel anxious before you need to drive somewhere, it's easy to pinpoint driving as a high-anxiety situation. However, you may feel low-level anxiety throughout your day in a number of other situations. This makes it difficult to define a specific start and end point for the routine that surrounds your habitual feelings of anxiety. In The Craving Mind, neuroscientist Dr. Judson Brewer suggests building self-awareness through mindfulness techniques such as meditation to help develop conscious awareness of the specific routines around your emotional habits. Step 2. Switch out rewards to discover your craving. Duhigg suggests that each time you recognize that you're about to engage in your typical habit, change the reward. This will help you to figure out what part of the routine you're truly craving. Is it the reward you've habitually turned to, or is it something else? Each time you perform this experiment, write down the first 3 words that come to mind. This will encourage you to consciously acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. For instance, are you still feeling unsettled and like your craving is unfulfilled? If you're not, your new reward satisfies your true craving, and you can discover what that craving is by considering what need the reward fulfills. Short-form note: according to Gretchen Rubin, author of The Happiness Project, Duhigg's method of changing the reward forces your brain to step out of autopilot mode and increases your awareness of how you feel. This process, coupled with writing down 3 words, encourages you to think about why you're engaging in your habit, the feelings you're chasing or trying to avoid, and the justifications you make for sticking with this habit. This awareness makes it much easier for you to avoid falling into your habitual routines. Step 3. Use categories to identify your cue. The purpose of this step is to figure out exactly what's triggering you to engage in your habit. Duhigg claims that all cues fit into one of 5 categories: location, time, emotional state, other people, and what's happening immediately before you engage in the habit. He argues that you can isolate the cue to your habit by considering these 5 categories the next time you feel a craving. Short-form note: it may seem that Duhigg's method doesn't work so well for habits that people compulsively engage in throughout the day, such as chain smoking or nail-biting. It's difficult to track and correlate the causes of something you unconsciously engage in. But psychologists argue that, at their root, these compulsive behaviors are an attempt to relieve underlying anxieties or other negative emotions. Consequently, they argue that all of Duhigg's categories help track the impact of different situations and people on your emotional state, making it easier to disentangle the subtle cues that trigger your habit. Step 4. Head off temptation. Once you've completed your experiments and defined the cue, routine, and reward components of your habit, Duhigg suggests that you make a plan to overcome any temptations you might feel to give in to your old cravings. This involves designing your cues to trigger new behavioral routines and cravings for the new reward to come. It could be as simple as removing the cue that triggers your cravings. Short-form note. James Clear, Atomic Habits, adds to Duhigg's approach by suggesting that you not only remove the cues for your unwanted habits but also add cues for your new habits. He explains that an effective plan involves shaping the visual cues within your environment to encourage only the new habits you seek to adopt. Visual cues are the biggest instigators for action because they trick your brain into thinking that it's more convenient to act on them. For example, it's convenient to drink more water when there's a glass of water on your desk. Start a ripple effect by changing one core habit. You may feel tempted to use the 4-step process to tackle multiple habits and overhaul your life. Duhigg says that addressing and managing multiple automatic routines will be difficult and, as a result, likely end in failure. Instead, he recommends an easier way to change all of your habits. Leverage one core habit. According to Duhigg, when you feel the benefits of changing one core habit, you start a chain reaction that encourages you to change other existing habits or develop additional good habits. In other words, the rewards you feel from successfully changing this habit influence you to restructure the rest of your habits. Short-form note. Like Duhigg, Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within, argues that making one beneficial change in your daily routine sets into motion a series of beneficial decisions and habits that improve your entire life. He explains that if you try to tackle all of your habits at the same time, you're more likely to focus on how difficult it is, feel overwhelmed, and resign yourself to staying in the same situation. On the other hand, committing to change a single habit allows you to effectively focus your energy and produce successful results. These positive results naturally encourage you to feel more confident about your ability to take control of your behaviors, and they motivate you to improve all of your habits. Create an entirely new habit. Duhigg claims that you can also apply your understanding of how cues, routines, and rewards underlie habitual behaviors to create entirely new habits. He suggests 3 steps to establish new habits. 1. Decide upon your cue and your reward. Duhigg claims that new habits require a clearly defined cue and a reward to become automatic routines. Short-form note. James Clear, Atomic Habits, argues that the easiest way to implement this step is to specifically link your new cue and reward to an existing routine, for instance, your current morning routine. This way, you've already completed the hardest part of your new habit, deciding on the cue and reward, and you simply have to follow through with your intended action. 2. Develop a craving for your reward. According to Duhigg, the more positive you feel about your reward, the more likely your brain will want to set up an automatic routine to support your new habit. Duhigg suggests that you find ways to actively develop a craving for your reward, visualizing, anticipating, or imagining this reward. Short-form note. In Awaken the Giant Within, Tony Robbins expands upon Duhigg's claim that your reward must feel positive by arguing that neuroassociations, the way your brain links experiences with pain or pleasure, influence all of your habits. According to Robbins, your brain relies on these neuroassociations to direct your behavior toward feeling pleasure and away from feeling pain, and you have to reprogram these associations to create new automatic routines. Your brain's more likely to create an automatic routine for your new habit if you remove all pain points from the routine and set it up to feel as pleasurable as possible. 3. Make a plan to overcome obstacles. You might feel reluctant to engage in your new habits for a number of reasons. Duhigg claims that you're more likely to stick to your new habits if you predict potential obstacles and plan ways to reduce your reluctance. Short-form note. Brendan Burchard, High Performance Habits, claims that the tendency to focus on obstacles and limitations occurs when you don't have a clear purpose for your actions. This causes you to focus too much on the difficulty of overcoming your present circumstances, unwanted habits, to look to the future, the benefits of your new habits. Burchard encourages you to focus on your purpose, what you'll gain from overcoming your obstacles, and use this to motivate yourself to move forward with your new habit. Believe that you can change your habits. Duhigg argues that belief is an essential part of overcoming your cravings and permanently changing any habit. Sometimes your cravings will feel unbearable and you'll want to fall back into your old habits. During these times, it's critical to believe that you can overcome your cravings and consciously decide how you want to act. Short-form note. Numerous studies prove that positive beliefs and expectations encourage you to rise above any limitations you face and focus on solutions that move you toward what you want. However, psychologists warn that unrealistic positive expectations, such as blindly believing that you'll easily overcome your habits without effort, set you up for failure because they don't prepare you to take proactive steps to counter the inevitable obstacles that you'll face. On the other hand, realistic positive expectations acknowledge that the road to change requires effort and persistence, and they encourage you to take a proactive approach towards making the changes that you want.